Raised Rowdy.
All right, guys, welcome to the Raised Rowdy Podcast. My name is Kurt Ozan.
I'm Nick Tressler.
We've got country music legend Mark Willis in the house, dude. Welcome.
Also known as Mike Willis.
Yeah.
Mike Willis.
Yeah, that's my rolling under radar name.
Yeah.
and it started years ago. Neal McCoy and I were always together. Or I say always together, like every show that I would go to with him, he would go, "Willis, what you doing?" You know, and that's how he would always greet me, right?
Yeah.
And then people, it transitioned from that into everybody thinking that my last name was Willis.
That's
Great.
funny.
You know, and so
Thanks, Neal.
people were like, people would be like, "Hey, I want y'all make welcome Mark Willis," and I'm like, "No, it's Wills." He's like, "I swear to God, I heard Neal McCoy say Willis." And it's like, you did. But you did.
He's just giving me heck. Yeah.
This is exactly the kind of things I wanted to hear when I was trying to get you to come on this podcast. So
Well, here we
please.
are.
Yeah.
Here we are.
We get a lot of different guests, and a lot of times it's like people releasing records or, you know, they have a TikTok blow up or whatever.
Or a
Yeah.
specific
And-
song that just came out that they're like PR people were making them come out and do podcasts with everyone
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that song.
Yeah, I have none of that.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. It's going to be a short interview.
No.
It's
No,
going
it's
to be
not.
quick.
We're doing this just for my own enjoyment.
I got
you
you.
know, you
I
know what I
got
mean?
you.
Just for
Yeah,
fun.
man.
So this is great. Thank you for coming in.
Dude, happy to be here.
I know we're a lot far. We're not in Georgia or anything, but we appreciate you coming in and spending time
Well,
with us.
I had to be up here this week anyway for people, you know, for hunters and stuff like that. We
Yeah.
have a big
Are you
Turkey,
at the Turkey?
Federation
Yeah.
event. I played the event this week for, you know, like the conservation aid, the kickoff.
Yep.
Played that and, you know, and just had a great time. You know, this is kind of one of those deals where I think I got asked to do that event probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I think I've played it every year since then.
That's awesome.
So it's kind of a cool thing, you know. And my youngest daughter, she's a hunter, more of a big game hunter, but we do a lot of those type of functions. So I always come up. This is kind of like one of those things where even though I don't live in Nashville, I feel like it's kind of in my backyard, you know. So we come and support different things, and so it's always been a good time.
And WTF's fun, and it's like, honestly, it's a really cool time in Nashville because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people from out of town and good time and happening.
Well, I think what it is you know, like if you're in that world and you go to SHOT Show or you go to, you know, some of the other big trade shows, you know, you go there and everybody has they have their schedule, and you know, it's boom 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 boom. This is actually one of the shows that you can go to, and so you're looking for a certain, you know, turkey call, and you're looking for a certain camo, and you're looking for whatever. You can literally go to that show and buy stuff there. And a lot of those you can't. You know, a lot of them are you know,
Just see
like,
it.
yeah, well, they're vendors only. So, you know, people are buying for their store for, you know, 4 months down the road, 6 months down the road. They go and they place their orders, you
Makes
know,
sense.
like SHOT Show or stuff like that.
Yep.
So it's always been a fun time to come up here and hang out, you know, and we got to see a bunch of our friends last night. You know, Thomas Rhett, TR and Rhett were at the show last night. They were supposed to headline the show, and then about 2 hours before that, I guess maybe that day, TR's wife started having contractions.
Oh, wow.
So they were on stage last night talking about, you know, Rhett's out there going, "I could be having a grandbaby right now." You know? so it was a cool thing. So hope everything went well for Lauren and TR and all that kind of stuff.
Sounds like CRS, but for turkey hunting and stuff like that.
It is, and for about 25 years, I did every CRS imaginable. There's some infamous stories.
Okay.
No, I'm not sharing them. I'm not sharing them.
I've been to CRS, so I understand why you're not sharing.
I'm not sharing them, but I will tell you, there is one amazing, infinite story that if you know anybody from the country music world, from the last 20 years, you ask them about Mark Wills and CRS, and that story will come up every time.
Oh God.
We'll have to ask about that this
I'm
year
telling
at
you that
CRS.
one. I'm telling you that one. Off camera,
Yeah.
and no recording device.
I feel like, you know, like I've known you probably for 3 years now or 4
man.
years or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you back then, so I don't know if it was a lot different or not. But I can't imagine you getting in any trouble.
Man, you know, No, I'm not a trouble guy. I mean, I'm not a drinker.
Right.
I'm not a drinker. I don't do a lot of dumb stuff. I mean, I always viewed, this is going to sound bad, but everybody thinks that being a musician is a constant party. Mm-hmm. I viewed being a musician as a job. You know, I mean, I love being at home with my family, with my daughters, with my wife, with our family and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, when I was leaving home, now as I always, I don't view it like, job, but when it was time to go to work, it was time to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, I've never understood the whole thing of going on stage drunk and stuff like that. You wouldn't go to Chevrolet and put cars together drunk.
Right.
You know, this is a job.
Mm-hmm.
The fans deserve you at your best when they come to the show.
Yep.
You know, and I'm not saying that having a drink to go out on stage to kind of calm the nerves or whatever.
Right.
You know, but we deal with people all the time. You see people all the time that are on stage and they are just hammered and and they forget the lyrics and they're stumbling all over the place and stuff like that. And maybe in a world where you paid, $19.95 for a ticket, that would fly.
Yeah.
But in today's world of a $2 and $3 and $4 and $500 ticket, to go, I'll put it in perspective. Okay. So me and a bunch of boys, my family guys, like, my son-in-law and my brother-in-law, and there was like 8 of us. We all decided we were going to go to Vegas and see the Eagles, right, at the Sphere.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I buy a $500 ticket, and that was like the artist circle. That was like, I'm friends with Vince, and Vince gave me the link to go buy the ticket. If I buy that ticket, and I go to Vegas, and I paid $500 for a ticket to sit in a prime spot and watch the Eagles, and Henley's back there slurring or doing whatever, you walk away from that and you're like, man, it was a great show, but that's not what I paid for.
Right.
We're professionals.
Yeah.
Maybe on Broadway, but I've never viewed going to work hammered as professional.
I think it's a great way to do it. And honestly, every job, like you said, like you're not going into Chick-fil-A drunk or high. Right. You know what I mean? Serving chicken sandwiches either.
I think it's empathy also, because like I have had, a buzz on played stage back in the day. But now it's like, when I look at, Luke Combs ticket prices, and then also babysitters and beer prices and food and parking and travel and hotels and stuff, it's like, I better sound good.
Well, that's my point. That's my that's my point.
I don't even drink the
it.
day before the show.
Well, again, I mean, like, there's a lot of crews, there's a lot of people that go out on the road, and and before the show, they have their shot, or they all have their beer and they cheers. Hey boys, let's go have a great show.
Totally.
Completely fine with that. That's kind of the social aspect of what you're doing. We're there to provide entertainment, but we're also there to do a great job.
Yeah.
Because nothing, I guarantee you, the 3 of us are sitting here and we're talking about what we do for a living, right? Mm-hmm. But I guarantee you, both of you in your mind, immediately when you talk about something like that, you can go back to a show. You can go back to a show where you went to. In my 30 years, this is my 30th year, I have probably on one hand could count nights that I went out that I did 3 shows in Texas, or 2 shows in Texas and 1 show in Louisiana, and I had the flu, and I went out and played those shows. I have zero recollection of 2 of those 3 shows because I was so sick. I had just come back from Israel from a trip with my daughter, and everybody that was in our group came home with the flu. But people were like, after I talked to them, they were like, "Man, we saw you in Greenville," and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And they were like, "Dude, you sounded great."
Hell yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't remember it, but I mean, but that's the kind of thing. That's what I'm talking about. It's about being professional. It's about going in and doing your job and doing your job, but at the same time, understanding that the people that are there, they bought a service that they, they kind of deserve the highest level that you can give them.
100%.
Also, like, kids are drinking less these days.
Yeah,
and so,
for sure.
it's like maybe
because they're broke.
Yeah.
Probably so. Yeah. I was gonna say maybe they're smarter, but that's probably actually the truth. But
well, I mean, if you look at housing prices and you look at rent and you look at because I have a 27-year-old daughter and and my 26, 27-year-old son-in-law, and like I see the world from their eyes versus the world from my eyes. They're trying to do the same thing that my wife and I did. My son-in-law is a great young man, and he's like, it is more important for me for you to be at home with our boys than it is for you to have a job outside the home. Mm-hmm. And she, and my wife and I are like, hey man, good for you. We're appreciative because we know how our daughters turned out by having mom at home all the time and nurturing and doing all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So they're trying to do the same thing for their boys, but that makes it a one income household.
Tough,
and if it weren't for his parents and the things that they do to help out and the things that we do to help out and all that kind of stuff, it'd be tough. And he's got a great job, but it would still be tough to survive in today's world with everything with real estate prices being here, and rent or whatever here and groceries here and all that kind of stuff. And to survive, I mean, it's tough on these younger kids.
It is,
and college kids, they don't even realize it. They don't realize it because most of them, that are in Nashville from, wherever, and they're going to school, they're there and they probably have a job, but that job is probably for their spending money. Mm-hmm. Housing is probably being taken care of by mom and dad. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but but that happens a lot,
often. Yeah. Especially through college.
Yep.
And then you get off of that.
You get off mom and daddy payroll.
Yeah. And then what do? You move to somewhere that's a third as nice.
Bus table's what I did.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter's in that exact role right now, mm-hmm. where, she is, she's 23 and she's got a full-time job and she decided, she's like, hey, where we live versus where my wife's sister lives, she can be to work in 7 minutes living there, or from where we live, it's 25. That don't sound like a big difference, but in morning traffic, mm-hmm. like, 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, that can be the difference between a 30-minute commute and a 10-minute commute.
Right.
And so she's like, I'm going to move in with my aunt. And it's like, okay, that's completely fine. But you're also a grown up and you have your own job. So, I'll still pay your car insurance. My 27-year-old daughter is still on my phone plan to this very day. And I'm like, it's time for you to get your own phone plan. And they're like, no, we're not. I'm staying on your phone plan, But
can I be on your phone plan?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll throw you on my phone plan.
Like Willis phone plan.
No, it's tough, and
life is hard.
If you think about it, like communities, different cultures are different, right?
Yeah.
Like overseas, a lot of these families live generationally in the same home. You know?
My wife says, nothing would make me happier than to have like a generational home where we live, and I'm like, well, if I ever make it to the Luke Combs financial plan, where I can afford 500 acres and build the one house right here, and then the little walkway to the gazebo in the middle of it, the big barn dominiums where the spoke out. That's what we'll do. We'll just have a big compound, and everybody will have their little house there. And we'll have that big common area right in the middle of it. I'd love to do that because we love spending time with our grandsons. Our youngest daughter, she's 23, so she's just learning how to make her way in the world, and I'm sure in a few years she'll be married, and and then they'll have babies coming along and all that kind of stuff. At least I hope so.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope I'm speaking that into existence. But but it is what it is. Yeah.
Well, that's it. I mean, family is, honestly, more important than anything else that's out there.
Yeah. And I think the older that you get, the more you recognize that. I think there are very few people. When I was in 20, and I was still playing the bars in Georgia and stuff like that. I mean, that's the fun time of your life. That's footloose and fancy free.
Yeah.
And and you don't, my mom and dad moved back to Blue Ridge, and I was like, okay, yeah, they're back at home, and I'm down here doing my thing. And then as time goes by, you realize how much more important, your parents are. If you're again, I'm 52 years old. My mom and dad are still alive.
Yeah.
And you probably, I probably do take that for granted every day, but there's nothing more important than your kids and your family, and you need to enjoy that and love that as long as you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my parents always say they're so thankful that I have a job where I have a lot of time off, so I can just come. I just spent 10 days with my parents just for no reason.
Absolutely.
And they're like, thank you, Luke Combs.
How blessed are you because of that?
Of course.
Because because when we think about that kind of stuff, we all have friends. We all have friends that lost their dad at 10 years old.
Totally.
We all have friends that that are 30 and their mom and dad are both gone. Stuff like that. So as you age and you think about where your life has taken you, think about where your life has brought you from. There's nothing that can replace that kind of stuff.
No, totally agree.
Yeah, no money in the world for sure, and that's literally what my parents talked about.
Yeah.
Of course, having a good job means you have the means to book a random flight to go just sit at your parents' house on the couch and do nothing for a week and a half,
Yeah.
or whatever. So
And get out of the snow all at once.
Yeah.
we did a thing in January. My youngest daughter, I saw it on social media somewhere, and it's like kids don't remember the toys that you buy them, but they remember the trips that you take them on. And I saw somebody talking about that kind of stuff, and I was like, yeah, I understand that. So for the last few years, I tell my kids, I'm like, okay, Macy, you're getting ready to turn 23. What do you want to do? And she's like, I want to go back to D.C. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do in D.C.? And she said, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And I'm like, you realize we're going to be there for 3 days. So we're going to fly in on Sunday. We'll be there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll fly out on the last flight Wednesday night. So figure out what you want to do, and we'll make all the phone calls, and we'll get everything set up. I mean, we flew in Sunday morning and landed at like 9:15, and by 10:30 we were at the Smithsonian Air and Space, the big one out by Dulles.
I love the Aerospace Museum.
Yes, and had a tour and got to do all the cool stuff, and and had people show us around, and left from there and went back, and I take that back. We checked in the hotel at like 9:15 in the morning. We walk in and they're like, "We're here to check in," and they're like, right. Sir, I'm sorry. We're check-in's not till 4. And I was like, well, here's my Bonvoy number. And they're like, your rooms are ready. Here you go. I'm like, yes, we'll throw our stuff in the room and we'll go. And so, like for 3 days, we literally ran like our butts were on fire. But we came home and we're looking back at the pictures, and in 10 years, when she's 33. I hope she'll look back on that and go, that was one of the most fun trips we ever had, because it was just kind of a spur of the moment thing where we decided, hey, we're going to do this. And I was like, yeah. And we basically decided, almost 2 weeks out what we were going to do, and we made it happen. That's we're blessed to be able to do stuff like that.
My mom did the same thing with me as a kid, like took me to DC and took me to all the museums.
Yeah.
And I went with my parents. And like she grew up in a small town in Georgia too, but she
whereabouts?
St. Mary's.
Where's
it's like
that at?
Southeast near Brunswick.
Okay.
It's like exit 1 on 95.
Okay, I got you.
It's like
Well, I mean, I'm from Blue Ridge, Georgia, so I mean, it's exact opposite end of the state, but but still, I mean, same little small town. So that's awesome.
But just her like growing up in a small town, and she was when it wasn't like cool to be that way. I guess she always wanted to like learn more. I guess so. That's kind of why she would take us on trips and
expand your horizons.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
When I love your story about when they took you to Paris and then you really figured out why as you got older and left.
I got to hear this story.
So when I was a kid, I would play this video game. Well, actually, let me tell the story this way. My dad is from Istanbul, Turkey.
Okay.
And he went to college.
I can see that now.
Yes. Yeah,
I can see that.
He went to college in France. And so he lived in France and speaks French. And so when in 1999, I was going to make the joke.
Thinking like 1970 something. He's 19. It's 2000.
Yeah. You know? Well, so I'm 12 years old, and we went to France for a vacation, and it was like this. As a 12-year-old kid, it was just like this mind-blowing experience of like
culture shock.
Yeah, and it was awesome. And the food, and I was like 12 years old, like trying to flirt with like the waitresses and stuff like that. And I never I always thought we went because my dad went to school there and lived in France, and like. He like did some busking in the Paris subways and stuff like that, whatever. And it turns out I don't even remember this asking. I said I wanted to go to France.
Yeah.
And it turns out because I played this video game where you like have these race cars that fight called Twisted Metal.
Okay.
And there was a Paris level, and that's why I wanted to go. And we ended up that was our family trip for that couple of years.
I thought you were going to say like your dad was like like CIA or something for
maybe
for that. Yeah, and there you are.
But my buddy Justin, he does that with all his kids. Yeah. Like when they turn 10, they get to pick a trip,
a destination,
instead of a gift. So I think that's really cool.
Well, yeah, I think we talk about that kind of stuff, and and for my kids, my career started in 1996. My oldest daughter was born in 1998. My youngest daughter was born in 2003. So I had the number one song in the country, or a number one song right when my oldest daughter was born. Mm-hmm. I had the number one song in the country when my youngest daughter was born.
Might need to have some more kids.
I know. That's what I said. I told my wife, I'm like, we're not that old. We can. Man, I'm 52. I mean, yeah, I'm going to be 72 when they're in college. But I mean, I'm just saying. But yeah, but those kind of things. I mean, my kids grew up, where every year we made a trip to Disney with Children's Miracle Network. Yeah. So they didn't know it any other way. We were always going different places, and yeah, you look back on it and you're like, okay, well, that was a work trip for me, but they didn't realize that. They never computed that we're going here because Dad has to work, but we get all these neat experiences, So I mean, that's stuff like that's cool, because as they get older in life, they realize, or you hope that they realize, you hope that you raise them to where they understand the cool things that they got to do, that that they didn't put two and two together when all that was happening. Mm-hmm. That how fortunate they were. Because you think about it, man. We were talking about child psychology with a buddy of mine the other day, and we were talking.
Awesome. That's cool.
Well, we were and it's a very, I don't know, it's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but we were talking about how kids can be abused by a mom or dad, and yet still love that parent. He's a police officer, and we were talking about that, and I said, think about it, man. That kid, that's their only childhood. They don't know anything different. Mm-hmm. They don't know anything different. That's why your life, you can be raised in a multi-million-dollar household and be bitter at your parents because of something you didn't get to do. You can be raised in a trailer with no running water and electricity on half the time, and look back on your childhood and love it, because even though your parents didn't have everything under the sun, They were providing for your needs. Those kids were loved, you know. And the same thing. You can be an abused child and still love that parent because you didn't know anything different.
Yeah.
And you know, and that was the conversation that we were having. And he was like, it blows my mind how these kids can be treated this way, and still when they talk about their parent, they fawn over how much they love their parent. I was like, man, think about it. You don't know any different.
Yeah.
You got one childhood.
Yep.
And your childhood for you, with your ups and with your downs, it's still your childhood. And we can talk about how I was raised. You can talk about how some of my best memories from my childhood. My dad was a truck driver. He was always, and it seemed like every year he would get laid off from work, right? And we had this house, and the house that I grew up in, we had a big creek beside the house, and some of my best childhood memories, 3, 4, 5 years old, was sitting out on the rock, and he bought me a little Zebco 202, the little shorty, like a kid fishing pole. And we sat out there and fish, I can remember one time when I was 4, we had to move into the basement of our house because my dad had got laid off from work, and and my mom and dad were like, we don't have enough money to pay to heat the upstairs part of the house with the electricity, so we had a big wooden stove in the like a big cast iron wood stove in the basement, and we would go out to my papa's property and we'd cut trees and we'd make firewood, and and that's what we'd live in the basement, and like it was a camp out in my basement for 3 months while it was cold. And to a grown up, you might look at that and you would go, man, that's horrible that you had to move your child into the basement to keep them warm in the winter. Guess what? That was the most fun I ever had. I got to camp out with my mom and dad every night, and I never knew anything different.
Yep.
I mean, how, it's amazing what the mind does, and it takes you back, and you have those memories. And while somebody from the outside looking at it would be like, that's sad. And your recollection of it is, it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
I got to camp out every night with my mom and dad in the basement, and we would open the door to the stove and roast marshmallows, and make s'mores in the basement. And if it was really cool, my mom would take a tea kettle and build a fire and set it on top of the stove and would make me hot chocolate. How cool was that? It was it's like living in the Little House on the Prairie days.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how the mind works with that kind of stuff.
I'm sure there's some billionaires that would pay a lot of money for their parents' love. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Totally.
100%. Absolutely.
Give it all, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I was always like thinking, I've kind of came to this realization as I've gotten older, is like, you are the main character of your world, right? And everyone else is the main character of their world. But you have to think when I'm trying to interact with people, I'm trying to think of like, okay, what's their perception on what's happening right now? Or even if like they're being disagreeable, I'm like, why, or what's causing it to be disagreeable? Just to have a better understanding of not getting upset with things.
Well, I think if we all understood that we're individuals, and the way that we're raised, the things that we experience throughout our lives shape the way we think.
Yeah,
a lot. I mean, we're not going to talk politics because that doesn't solve anything. I guarantee you, the three of us sitting around this table, we could start talking about stuff, and I guarantee we'd have things we agree on. Yes. And I guarantee we have things that we vehemently disagree on. Yep. Well, that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's what makes our world. That's what makes America great. That's what makes your right to vote and my right to vote and your right to vote. We all get to have our say. Yep. That's just that to me, that's something that that at the end of the day, you are the way you are because of the way you were raised, and that sort of stuff, and that can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing.
For sure.
I choose to believe that it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and same thing. You only know what you know.
Yeah.
As a kid, you only know the things that you were taught.
Yep.
And the ways that you were brought up. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, if you decide some of those things might not be how you want to be, you can change the things you want to change.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Mm-hmm. But no, I totally agree. And we always talk about that. I'm like, I'm a political science major from college, but that is not the person that I am as like a human. If you're a good person, you're a good person. Like, that's what I think. How you treat people.
I truly believe that. You know, that's exactly what I was saying, was that how we all have our differences in opinion and stuff like that. But I'm gonna base the way I think of you by the way you treat me.
Yes.
You know, and if you show me the respect that I deserve, and I show you the respect that you deserve, we can walk away from a table with disagreements and be like, I still like that dude.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
where our social media world has taken over is that, you know, you and I, because we have a disagreement, you know, well, I have to hate you and I have to publicly, you know, scold you, and I have to try to make you look stupid, you know, for the way that you believe, you know, and in reality, that's what made our country the greatest country in the world, was that we could disagree on stuff. You could have your opinion, I could have my opinion. You know, back when I was a kid, and y'all are younger than me, and back when I was a kid, you know, I've heard stories because I'd done a lot of stuff in D.C. and you would have two politicians, and they would be on the floor of the Senate or the floor of the House, you know, or whatever, and they would, I mean, just be going at it. And then that night, you would see them at a restaurant 3 blocks from the Capitol having dinner together. People are like, wait a minute. I was watching you guys just scream at each other. And they're like, yeah, because we're adults. Yeah. And we can disagree on something and then be like, when we leave here, we're going to dinner. And we're going to sit down and I'm going to tell you how I feel, and you're going to tell me how you feel. And at the end of dinner, we're going to have a better understanding as to who each other are.
Yep.
You know, and they're going to shake hands. And you know what? At the end of the day, they're going to be better friends, or they're going to be better associates because they understand each other. I know where you're coming from. You know where I'm coming from. It doesn't mean that I agree with you.
Yep.
But we've lost our ability to do that.
Yeah, modern culture has a hard time with accepting disagreements. That's one of the biggest changes that, like you've said, since I was a kid. And I mean, media was not editorial back then.
Right.
It was, but it was a little bit more subtle maybe.
Well,
you know?
I said this somewhere the other day. I remember when I was a kid, you know, later in life, Walter Cronkite, you knew that he was, you know, you knew where he stood politically. Mm-hmm. But on the evening news, he told you what happened in the news that day, and it wasn't 30 seconds of here's what happened and here's 3 minutes of why it was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, or what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was they told you what happened, they told you what was said, and then you as an adult said, well, I'm going to make up my opinion. I'm going to make up my opinion on where I stand on that.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you really wanted to dive into it, you would dive a little deeper and you would be like, oh, well, this was a direct, you know, correlation with this incident that happened. And you know, this, I mean, look at what we're dealing with right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I go to the gym, and every day I go to Planet Fitness, and there's a
shameless plug for your free membership.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's basically free anyway. It's so cheap. But there's TVs everywhere, and there's a Fox News and a CNN, and it's just the way they report on the same story is crazy.
Yeah.
And
just
I'm like,
watching the headline and how varied it is. It is a strange world, and I remember.
I'm going to tell you what I think they should do.
Yes.
All right. And they may have this already. I'm sure they probably do, but this will tell you how long it's been since I've been in the gym. You go in, and they should have an app on your phone, right? And they've got the Fox News, and they've got CNN, and they've got MSNBC, and they've got everything, right? And it should be labeled A, B, C, D, E. And you go in, and you sign in your phone to the app, and you pick A, B, or you can hear what's going on. Because there's nothing in the world worse than you know, being on the treadmill and you're running and you're like, okay. And you're like, I really wish I could hear what they're saying right now.
Okay.
You know?
Well, if you bring your headphones, the treadmills, you can do that at Planet Fitness.
Again, that's how long it's been since I've been in the gym. I'm not going to the gym. You know? This you don't waste this Waffle House. All right.
Amen,
there could be a
brother.
time when I'm poor and don't have any money, and so I got a little bit
reserve
of
tank.
a little bit of love
All
right
these,
there.
bro.
I got too much of a reserve.
Well, we've all been there, baby. Don't worry.
No, I think
funny.
that's extremely true. And honestly, like with music as big as it is culturally right now, specifically country music, it's definitely in the center of a lot of this chaos. You know.
Well, I think because we interject ourselves into that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, people that know me know where I stand. Mm-hmm. There's not a question. They know who I am and they know what I stand for. But people don't come to my shows. They don't come to a theater. They don't come to a fair. They don't come to a festival for me to get up there and start telling them how they should feel.
Right.
That's not what we are.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't run for office, and I feel that people that get up there and use their platform to berate other people and tell them that they're wrong, I think that shows their stupidity.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to share your ideas, if you want to share your belief, that's fine, and that's your platform, and you're well within your rights to do that if you want to.
Yeah.
But I think that alienates people. You're only going to stoke the fire under people that agree with you, and the people that disagree with you, they're never going to buy a ticket again.
Yeah.
They're never going to buy the record. They're never going to, they're never going to be the person that's like, oh, Mark Willis is coming to town. We're going to go see him again.
Yep.
You know, you stoke that base, and again, it's just a difference in philosophy. You know, where we have basically, told people you have to step forward and you have to tell people where you stand, and it's like, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. In my opinion, I go to a concert as a fan to get away from all
Absolutely.
this chaos.
Amen, brother.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Go back to 2001, right after the Twin Towers, right after all that stuff happened, and by 2002, people were kind of falling back into I just want entertainment. I just want to hear the music, and that's what we've always tried to do. And I think that there's a few of us out there that I just want to go sing my songs. I'm not educated enough on those situations to be weighing in on how you should feel or how you should feel.
Yeah.
I know how I feel.
Right.
And
Yes.
that's we're gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Love it.
Perfectly said, dude. That's how I feel, 100%.
Yeah.
So you've been in country music a little bit longer than I have.
30 years.
Okay. And so
How old are you?
I'm 38. Yes.
There you
38.
go. There you go. So you were 8 in 1996 when Jacob's Ladder hit the radio in about March.
There you go.
Or you might have been 7. When's your birthday?
May.
Oh yeah,
May
so
2nd.
You were 7. You were 7.
I was born in 87. So, but now I feel like I'm, there's like the Zach Bryan's politics are being posted or whoever, all this stuff. It wasn't like that back in the day, I would assume.
You know
not.
what? I don't think so.
Country music has been political, of course, like outlaw country and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
Well, but you know what was crazy about outlaw country is that like you had Waylon, you had Willie, you had Christopherson, Christopherson was probably one of the most intelligent people. I mean, he was a freaking Rhodes Scholar. But you had people, and again, it was a different world. You had 2 print news organizations. You had maybe TNN, and you were never going to put on TNN your political stance. It was all about the music. If you knew the artist individually, you knew who they were. I think that's the problem with our world today is that people feel like, well, this is my platform and I have to, scream from the heavens, how I feel. and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, that was just never my deal. And, you know, and like I was doing a podcast yesterday with Allison Owen, who is Randy Owen's daughter. Mm-hmm. And her podcast was it's called Uncharted Alabama. And it was about the songs that weren't the singles. So it was album cuts. And that's what we were talking about, you know. And we were talking about how, like, when I was a kid, you know, this was my interest. And I knew everything about Randy and Teddy and Jeff and Mark. I knew everything about them that was put out in public, right? Mm-hmm. I read every article. I listened to every special. I did all that kind of stuff. And, you know, and we were talking about that kind of stuff. And she asked me, she goes, what's your interest outside of music? And I said, man, I love to play golf, you know? And she said, well, why do you love to play golf? And I said, well, because, and you know, how much time in a day, in a 24-hour period, you land in Dallas and you're playing tomorrow in Dallas, right? So if you're playing a stadium and you go today to do sound check in a stadium, you might be there 2 hours, right? You might get everything set up, sound check, make sure your ears are working, all that kind of stuff. Now you've got 22 hours, right? You got 22 hours to find something to do. And, you know, and that's what we're talking about. I love to go play golf. I can go play golf with 3 or 4 of my guys in my band, and we can have a great time. I can go by myself if I just want to get away from everything and go play golf. And I said, you know, what did your dad do? You know, and she goes, cows. He loves cows. They have a huge business outside of the group Alabama. Mm-hmm. That's what he loved. She said he would be traveling around the country, and he would know that this farmer buddy that you know he bought cows from before was 30 miles away from the show that they were going to be playing tonight. So they'd roll in off the bus, and he'd get a rent-a-car and drive out to a farm and like go talk to the guy.
So country.
Go talk to the guy about cows. Mm-hmm. You know, I was like, that's awesome. You know, that's where that to me that was just that blew my mind. You know, because that's our hobbies. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's what I still love to do to this very day. You know, when we were talking about the 90s country, we're talking about the politics of it all. You know, I didn't know where Garth stood politically. Right. I didn't know where Alan stood politically. I didn't know where Brooks and Dunn stood politically, or Travis Tritt, or any of those guys. I liked them for the music.
Right.
I loved Alabama for the music. You know, it didn't weigh in, and it still doesn't to this day weigh in on my ability to be a fan of the music.
Yep. Because
I feel like I think bigger than that, and at the exact same time, I think smaller than that. You know, if I love the music, you're entitled to have your opinion. Mm-hmm. Now, at the point where you start telling me that my opinion has to be your opinion, that's where I might go, no, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where I've always kind of kept it, you know, tried to keep it in my lane.
Yeah, it's like political beliefs are like genitals. Everyone's got them, but you don't want to know about them sometimes.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And sometimes then you do.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh man.
That's
funny. Well, we've been talking about a lot of stuff, but I know one of the things that you have here on the cup is the Opry Hunt.
Oh, yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about your history with the Opry and becoming an Opry member as well?
Yeah, man. Yeah. 1997, August of 97, I had always dreamed of playing the Opry. And I think for anybody who aspires to be in country music, you know, you have your bucket list. You have your things that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And for me, you know, that was always that started out with I wanted to be on Crook and Chase, because Crook and Chase was kind of the nighttime show on TNN or Primetime Country, or or those shows. I always wanted to be on those shows because, in my opinion, if you were on those shows, you had made it. You'd made it to that level, right? And then I wanted to to tour with the people that I loved. My first tour was Clay Walker, and I had met Clay before his first single came out. He came into the Buckboard, which is where I was working, and we got to know each other there. And I toured with Clay and Leanne Womack and Kevin Sharp. That was the first tour I was ever on in like '97. And I always set what I consider realistic goals, right? I didn't want to. Even in 1996, Garth is the biggest thing out there, and I never wanted to be that. I never wanted to be the guy having to shoulder all of that responsibility. I wanted to be the guy that sang great songs and traveled and as part of a tour and had great songs on the radio. So and then one of my other main goals was to sing on the Grand Ole Opry. 1997, I never ever thought that I would have been a Grand Ole Opry member. 98, you start having number ones, and you try to play the Opry when they call, or you try to give your availability, because I still to this day, 30 years later, I don't live in Nashville.
Right.
So, so my Opry plans were always a little further out. Like, I would call them and say, hey, I'm going to be in Nashville Thursday, Friday before we head to Paducah to do a thing on Saturday. If you need somebody for the Opry Friday night, we're available, right? Mm-hmm. That was always kind of how I planned around it. And so, 98, you have your first number one. You play it a few times, and you're kind of hoping, you're like, man, maybe one day I'll get to be a member here. And you dream of that. And I think for every individual artist, it comes along at different times. Like for Luke had played the Opry 4 or 5 times when we asked him to be a new member.
Is there a conversation amongst the other members? Like,
yes.
And you're like, what do you guys think about Luke? And they're like, cool.
Yes. It's an off the record conversation. And what I mean by that is, they'll say to you, hey man, what do you think about this guy? And a lot, and at least in my opinion, a lot of it comes down to are they a good person? Because when you become an Opry member, from that point forward, pretty much everything you do represents the Opry. You go out and do something stupid in public, people are going to be like, well, he's an Opry member, and he's doing that, so that's my take on it. Then you also want people that love, respect, and understand what the Opry is. Vince Gill, I think, says it best. Vince is always like, the Opry is the place where in your heyday you give to the Opry, and then the Opry gives to you. And we lost one of our, in my opinion, one of our great legacy members, Jeannie Seeley, this past year, and I loved Jeannie. The very first night that I made my Opry debut, she introduced me, and the night that I got asked to be an Opry member, December 21st of 2018, she was standing on the side of the stage. And the night that I got inducted into the Grand Ole Opry, she introduced me. So it was a full circle.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that a lot of those members were the members that brought me in.
Yeah.
You know,
That's amazing.
I love it.
think that I think that over time, you know, I showed them what the Opry meant to me. You know, and what I mean by that is, you know, when little Jimmy Dickens died, you know, I was at Disney World, and the phone call comes in, and my youngest daughter Macy, at 5 years old, she walked into my the dressing room one night. I was in dressing room number 5, and she was 5. She walks in and she goes, "Daddy, I have a boyfriend." And I said, "You do?" She goes, "Yep, little Jimmy Dickens." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yep." And she's standing there with her hands on her hips. She goes, "Yep." And I said, "Well, I'm going to go have a conversation with little Jimmy Dickens." And I do the old man, like, push myself up off the couch. And she goes, "Daddy, do you know why I'm his girlfriend?" And I said, "No, why?" And she goes, "I'm his size." Those people were the people that every time I was at the Opry, they would walk in and they would see us and they would speak, and they would come and hang out in the dressing room, and they would talk to the kids, and they would make everybody feel welcome. And, you know, we're at Disney World when the phone call comes in that little Jimmy passed away. And I didn't want to tell my daughter. You always remember where you learn of bad news. 100%. I did not want my daughter to remember that her friend, little Jimmy Dickens, I didn't want her to learn that at Disney in the Magic Kingdom. So I put them on the monorail. We ride the monorail to the Grand Floridian. And if I'm remembering this correctly, we got off the monorail. We went into the hotel, and I set them down in the lobby, and I told her, and she cried like she had just lost her grandpa, you know, because she loved little Jimmy, you know. But we cut our trip short to come home so I could go to his funeral, because I felt like that was the respect thing to do. You know, and I think that kind of stuff, that's what the Opry looks for. I think they look for people that understand what the Opry is. I think they look for people that will put the Opry here, because a membership at the Opry is not something that you put here and you acquire it and you tuck it in your back pocket, and it's something that goes on your resume. The Opry is a staple in country music that so many people aspire to be on that stage. Yeah. And if you are one of the lucky few, I'm the 218th person in 100 years to be able to call that house my home. If that's on your bucket list, it needs to be a priority. And if it's not, you need to not accept it.
Yeah, totally. And also, I think what the layman doesn't realize is that if you're an artist and you have a lot going on in your life, and you've got family and touring and all this stuff, it can be difficult to come play 3 songs.
Absolutely.
You know, and then you got to pay your band. And so it's like you're dedicating your time and also money and things. I mean, like, you get paid, but it's not like your guarantee. You know, it's a couple $100 or whatever. So it's a lot. But then you have these artists that can't tour anymore. They're just old, you know, older cats, gals. It's like they get to come out and play with this killer band. Yep. And it's just like they still get to do what they're put on this earth to do. Yep. It's great.
Well, you know, I think again, like Vince says, you take care of the Opry, and then the Opry will take care of you. Yeah. And I truly believe that, because I've seen it firsthand. I've seen. I want to tell you a story that I've told no one else. Okay.
Please.
So 25 years ago, Jeannie Seeley and I were walking down the hallway. And, you know, and the first time I ever came to Nashville to come to the Opry was actually to be on Primetime Country. And so I got to go into Opryland theme park. Did sound check at 10 o'clock that morning with the band. Then you had till 2 o'clock, you know, so they would let you go into the theme park and go ride rides and stuff like that. And so, telling all that to tell you that, you know, 20 plus years ago, Jeannie Seeley's walking down the hallway and she has this bag over her shoulder. It's like a wardrobe bag, and I see it, and I get closer to it, and it says Opryland on the bag, and I'm like, where did you get that? And she turns around, and if you knew Seeley, she turns around and she goes, I stole this bag from Opryland 40 years ago. And I'm like, really? And she goes, yep. And I said, are there any more out there? Because I've been looking for a pair of hee-haw overalls for what seems like 20 years, and I can't find them. I've seen them, but I just can't find a pair that that fits me.
Right.
So she says, I don't know. Talk to Ron would know. He's the guy that does all the internet stuff. So I asked Ron. I said, hey man, where can you find those? And he goes, man, I've never seen another one of those bags anywhere. And I told Seeley, we were standing right there, and I said to her, listen, will you put that in your will for me? And she and just as quick as Jeannie Seeley was, she goes, get in line, big boy. And I'm like, fair enough, Yeah. So you bounce forward, and I've seen that bag for years because that's what she would always carry her clothes to the Opry in. And of course, Jeannie passed away this past summer, fall, and so at Christmas time, I'm playing the Opry. It's real close to I think it was like the 20th or 21st, somewhere around that time frame, and that would have been the anniversary of my invitation, right? And Ron Harmon walks into the Opry, and he goes, Seeley has a Christmas gift for you.
Oh my God.
I'm like, okay. It was weird. I truly wasn't thinking anything about like what it was, and it was in a box. And I opened the box, and in the box was a picture of Jeannie with the Opryland bag from like 25 years ago, right? Standing in the hallway, and on the back side of the picture was a picture of the last outfit that Jeannie wore on the Opry the last time she was there, in the blue bag in her dressing room. And underneath that was the blue bag.
Wow.
So, like those kind of things to me mean the world,
Yeah.
That's the world for me. Like the night that I became a Grand Ole Opry member, I wore George Jones's jacket on the stage. I had two jackets. I had one that was made for me, and then I had Mr. George's jacket that I got to wear. Those are the things that mean the world. You don't get to replace that kind of stuff. And and like now to this day, I have a bag that was stolen from Opryland 40 years ago, right? And when you say it like that, that means nothing. But to know that 20 years ago, I said, hey, I'd love to have that. And I'm told, yeah, whatever, and then in her passing, it was her wishes for that to be mine. That's the cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's the stuff right there. And what that means for me is that, Lord willing, if I perform at the Opry for the next 40 years, because I plan on living to be at least 90, that bag will continue to do its job. It will continue to go to the Opry. My locker at the Opry was Gene Shepard's locker. Gene Shepard was an Opry member when the Opry left the Ryman and went to the Opry House, which means that the locker that was hers was only hers. It was my job to continue that legacy. So if you open my locker at the Opry, it's got Gene Shepard's picture hanging in it. It's got Gene Shepard's picture hanging in it because it was hers before it was mine. That's what the Opry is.
Yeah.
It's to continue that legacy, and that's what I hope we do. We just turned 100. I hope when we turn 150, I hope I'm still here. Nothing would make me happier than to be 102 years old with my walker going out on stage like, it was 1970 something in the world, and I grew up in, you know. But if I'm not, I hope that whoever comes behind me, I hope when they become an Opry member, they go, whose locker was this?
Yeah.
And they go, well, that belonged to Mark Wills. And they go, okay, cool. You know, I hope it works that way, because it works that way for me.
Yeah.
Nothing makes me happier than to know that the people that come before us, that they're gone and we still honor them. You know, I try to honor Roy Acuff every time I walk on stage. Every time I walk on stage, I try to do what his wishes were. And he would always tell acts when they came to the Opry, sing the song that brought you here. Sing the song that brought you to the Opry. Doesn't have to be your first number one. It could have been your first single. It could have been whatever song you sang the first time you came on the Opry. So when I go to the Opry, I always try to sing Jacob's Ladder. It's the most traditional country song I have, but it's a great storytelling song. But more than anything, it's the song that brought me to the Opry. You know, so you honor that tradition. You know, there's another tradition that goes with the Opry, and you have to tell Luke this. I don't know if he knows this, but Mr. Acuff always had an open door policy at the Opry, right? So, you know, have a lot of acts in today's world, and they come to the Opry and they go to their dressing room, and the first thing they do when they go in the dressing room is shut the door, right? And I understand if you're a girl and you're getting makeup done or you're changing clothes, I completely understand all that. But the Opry, the backstage of the Opry, was that you could walk down the hall and you could look in the bluegrass dressing room and you could see Bill Monroe. You could hear him playing. You could walk past and you'd see little Jimmy Dickens. And he was in there telling stories. He was holding court, and he had, you know, 6 people in there, and he was telling stories, talking about, you know, Hank and traveling with Hank and doing stuff like that. You walk down, you'd walk past dressing room number 1, and there was Mr. Acuff, and he was in there, and he'd always have a couple of musicians, and they were playing fiddle, and they were doing whatever they were doing. And that was the open door policy. Nobody felt excluded. You're backstage, you know. There's a great show happening on stage, but the better show happens back here.
Totally.
You know, you're on stage and you don't get to have that conversation. You don't get to ask that question. You don't get to be like, Mr. Acuff, what about this? You know, what about this song? You know, what about whatever? That's the open door policy. And the rule for dressing room number 1 is that the door's never shut.
I love that.
And there's two people that I know subscribe to that theory to this very day. Me and Vince Gill. Vince Gill will tell you the same thing. Dressing room number 1, the door never shuts. There's a bathroom in there so that if you need to change, you go into the bathroom and shut the door.
I love it.
It's never closed.
Yeah, that's true. I always think that, like, the bluegrass room for me backstage at the Opry is the coolest.
Absolutely.
Yes, because they always they don't have
it's the best
guitars.
jam sessions.
Yes.
It's the best jam sessions. It always sounds amazing. And no matter, you can have 15 players playing in that room, and yet you can still hear the vocal.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing. Like you coming down through the other night, and Ricky and Kentucky Thunder, they're in there, and and Ricky's got a big bluegrass band. You know, there's 2 or 3 acoustic players, and upright bass and banjo and mando and fiddle and all that kind of stuff, and then you always have a couple more musicians that meander their way down the hallway, and they'll hear ding 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 ding, and then they're like, I know what's going on now.
Yeah.
And they go right into the dressing room, and before you know it, there's 18 people in the dressing room, and they're all playing, and yet the vocal is still right here. It's the coolest thing, because you can always hear the vocal above all those instruments in that room. It's eerie. It's kind of eerie in the fact that it's there. It's always there. It's like the perfect mix. Yet there's no mix.
Right.
It's neat.
They're just such dynamic players.
Absolutely.
They know what to do. It reminds me of like being in like a college dorm when there's a party. Like everyone's asleep and there's like the one room where the party. Like that's the bluegrass room.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whether it be Daly and Vincent, whether it be Rhonda Vincent, whether it be, whoever's in that room, there's always great music coming off that stage. And you know, and what's funny is that, you know, I don't think of Vince Gill as a bluegrass guy, because, you know, all the music I ever heard was the stuff on the radio. Mm-hmm. He's a huge bluegrass guy. If there's bluegrass going on in that room, he's right in the middle of it. You know, with Rhonda, or with, you know, with Jamie Daly, or you know, or Ricky, or whoever's in that room. Sister Sadie, man, they were out there the other night, and she just killed it. I mean, so good, you know. I think that, to me, that's what's great about the modern day Opry, is that, you know, when I became a member, we were kind of having a discussion about the Opry show. And I said, you know, and I'm sure there were other people that said it, but I remember specifically saying, let's get back to what the Opry used to be. Let's have some gospel. Try to have some gospel every night. Let's try to have some bluegrass every night. Let's have some modern country. Let's have some traditional country. Let's have a comedian. Let's have all of the things that made the Opry the show that when I think of my childhood, that's what I think of. I think of the Opry being like a more straight version of Hee Haw. You know, like you had the comedy on stage, you had the gospel, you had all those pieces, and that's what made the Opry show great. Was that regardless of who was on the show, regardless of if you bought your ticket 3 months ago, because you buy it 3 months in advance, unless you know Carrie Underwood's going to be there that night, and that's the reason you buy the ticket, right?
Yep. Unless
you buy it for that reason, you don't know who's going to be on the show that night. A lot of times those slots are filled that week. You know, totally. And so
it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter. You come to the Opry, and you're going to leave that night being introduced to something, reminiscing about something, hearing something that you've never heard but that you loved. You know, that's the thing about the Opry show that I feel like is so good.
It's like past, present, and future.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great summation.
Yeah. I remember the first time I played it, how scared I was, absolutely terrified. You know, and
welcome to the club, big boy.
Yeah. and I was playing steel guitar, and I went back and listened, and you could hear, like, I
could hear
good,
the vibrato,
but my hands were shaking so much it was like you could hear it in the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, you know, Tommy's just standing inside stage waiting. He doesn't care, but it's just like, that's not me, wait. You know, and he's just like just standing there, just like waiting to go on next, not being judgmental at all, but just like.
So I told this story. I told this story to Vince, you know, because Vince and I feel like our friendship gets better as time goes on. But like, I was always a huge Vince fan. I always loved the great songs and the storytelling and all the stuff that, you know, that made him Vince. Mm-hmm. And one night we're there, and he literally walks out and he takes a chair, just picks up like a folding chair, and sits it down on the side of the stage, right in front of the monitor board, and I'm getting ready to go on stage, and he just walks up and picks a chair and sets it down and is sitting there staring at center stage. And I walk out there and I look over, and there's Vince Gill. And I'm like, you need something? And he's like, what? And I was like, I'm already nervous enough. I really don't need you staring at me. And you know what he did? He takes his chair, he picks it up, turns it around, and then turns his back on me. So I'm sitting there. I'm sitting here on stage, and he's just got his back to me. He's just sitting there. I was like, I mean, it kind of broke the tension. Mm. You know, broke that moment of like nervousness, you know, because he's just there to hang out and have fun, you know. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. That is truly what makes the Opry so special.
I love it.
And then, like, when you're new to playing it, you walk, like, for me, it was like little Jimmy Dickens was there, and like, and you go, and then it's like there's Darius Rucker, and it's like I'm not used to being around these kind of people, you know.
Right.
And then now it's like I've been around the block a bit, and not as much Opry-wise as you have, but like enough to be like, okay, there's like the people.
But you're comfortable.
Yeah. And I'm less like, but I'm like, who was there the first night you played? Do you remember?
Well, see, that was so. I'm 99% certain that the first night I was there, Porter was there, little Jimmy was there, and obviously Jeannie Seeley was there.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same night. So Jeannie Seeley was hosting like the backstage. Like they used to have a show called Backstage at the Opry, and it was on TNN. And what they would do is they would have like this 30-minute lead up show to the Opry show. Okay, so if you boys are not old enough to remember that, but that's kind of how the programming was. The Opry show was an hour, and I think it was like either a 30-minute segment before, and they would interview like. If you were making your Opry debut, you would do the interview talking about it's my first time on the Opry, and it was set up. This is no lie, if memory serves me correctly, and I'm getting older. So, but you would literally be there, and the producer behind the camera will be going like this, and they're like, "Okay, you're up. We're in commercial. We're going to commercial. You're on." And so you would say, "Okay, thank you," and you would get up and walk out that door, walk through that stage door. They would put your guitar on you. And you would stand right there for about 15 seconds, and Porter would be on stage, and he would go, "We got a young boy making his Grand Ole Opry debut tonight. Want you to put your hands together and welcome him to the stage," And they would introduce you, and you would go out and do your thing, And like, when I made my Opry debut, it was kind of the televised thing. You got one song. You didn't have, I remember nothing of the first time I was on that stage. Nothing. I remember doing the show with Seeley. I remember when I got there, Bob Whitaker, who was the Opry general manager, welcomed me. He said, "Hey, walks up and here, I'm Bob. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming out and playing the Opry tonight. You're going to be in dressing room, whatever, and and let us know if you need anything." It's like, "Yes, sir." And they walked me to the dressing room, and immediately I get to the dressing room, they're like, "Hey, get dressed. You got to go do the press stuff." They didn't document it like they do now. I don't have
the parking
hours.
plaque.
Yes, I don't have an hour's worth of footage from my Opry debut. I have one photo. I literally have one photo. It was me walking off the stage after I had sang Jacob's Ladder, hugging my wife. Her dad is standing in the background. I think my parents were there as well. Well, that's the only memory that I have of it.
Sounds like a great photo, at least.
It was a great photo, but that's the only memory I have of it.
Now you can get off stage and just go on YouTube and like watch the whole thing with brilliant audio and video.
Right, right.
See if you messed up or not.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, but we didn't have YouTube back then. Yeah. We didn't have the internet.
Right.
We didn't have anything.
Yeah, no doubt.
It was awesome.
Man, this makes me want to go to the Opry so bad right now.
Well, there's one tomorrow night and one Saturday night. You can just
right.
come on out and hang out with us.
Yeah. Are you playing it now that you're in town?
Yeah. So like this weekend, Mercy Me's on the Opry. Trace is on the Opry with us. We got a couple people making their debut. Opry debut on Friday night and Opry debut on Saturday night. And those to me, those are special. I like when somebody's making their Opry debut, whether they know me or not. I always like to go up and welcome them and say, "Hey, I'm an Opry member. Just wanted to welcome you out to the Opry, and hope you have a great time tonight. If there's anything you need, we'll help you out any way possible. You got lemonade, and she'll take care. If you need anything to drink, or the green room, you have tea and lemonade and all that kind of stuff in there. If you need anything, just let us know. Try to do that, because that was a courtesy that was extended to me.
Yeah,
when I first started showing up there.
And I know through Luke that you guys do get together and do hunts.
Yeah, we try to do some stuff that is structured, and then a lot of times somebody will just say, "Hey man, we're going turkey hunting, in a month, are you off that weekend? Are you available to go?" Absolutely, yeah, let's go. So I mean, I do a lot of stuff with Craig Morgan, Luke and I, we've done a couple of them together.
Yes, we see.
It's always fun. I mean, I think he was going to try to come this past year, but he's had baby after baby after baby after baby. So it's kind of hard. You know, I can't imagine. You know, like our kids were 4 years apart, so my oldest daughter was like little mommy when my youngest daughter came along. I can't imagine having 3, like boom, 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 boom. I mean,
I couldn't imagine having 1 in touring.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. It's like
Yeah.
you got 3 back to back to back to back. She must be Superwoman.
She's great.
Yeah.
Of course. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But I always want to know, like, about like the hunt. Like, do you guys just like? I love jamming, and some people are kind of like don't like to do that. But do people just pull acoustic guitars out of these things?
Yeah, man. We take so this year.
That's awesome.
So for the Opry 100, Martin made some. I think it was either 100 or 500 D28s, and they all have like the Opry 100 in abalone down the neck and all that kind of stuff. And I told them when they started promoting them, I said, hey, listen, I want a couple of those,
Same.
I want a couple of those. And so they sent Vince the prototype. They sent Vince number 1, and I got number 2.
That's awesome.
And so I just decided this year, because it sounds so good, and I had Gruen put a pickup in it for me. So I just decided that was gonna be one of my tour guitars this year. So it's gonna travel with me everywhere we go.
Love that.
For 2026 and maybe 2027. I don't know. I mean, it could be Trigger for me. You know, that could be the guitar that you see for the next 30 years on the road.
When you play the 150th anniversary.
Yeah, when I play the 150th, I'll have my 100, Opry there, and I'll be like, we're gonna play I Do Cherish You Tonight. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll set like, so this year we were down there, and John Conley went with us, you know, and we're sitting there, and and Conley's like, we're like, actually as an Opry member, like that kind of Opry member, the legacy Opry member, you don't get to choose your song. So like Ray Fulcher, Ray goes with us, right? And he went with us this year. And so when we start, Ray goes, you're going to sing, Back at One. You're going to sing Almost Doesn't Count. You're going to sing Wish You Were Here. And so like I just sit there and go, what do you want to hear? And play, Almost Doesn't Count. Okay. And I'll play Almost Doesn't Count. And then it comes back, my time around, and
So you guys are just passing guitars around.
we're just passing guitars around the circle, like Craig Morgan's over there, and I pass it to Craig, and Craig looks at me, and I go, and he goes, this time down, and he starts singing, his song. Yeah, exactly. So it's more dictatorial. You don't really choose what you want to play.
I want to play a new one. No, you're
not. That's exactly.
Shelton's going to play Austin or whatever.
I just cut this song. Nobody cares. Play the hit,
Play the hit.
We throw it to Conley, and I hand him my guitar, and I hand it to him, and he goes, boys, I don't play a lot of guitar on the road. And I'm like, well, then you're singing Rose-Colored Glasses,
I know.
And I started, and he just sang it like, a champ, like sound just like the record, But that's the neat stuff that we get to do.
And if you filmed it, it just wouldn't be as cool. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah,
you're not allowed to.
Right.
The first year I went, the first or second year I went, we would sit around the circle, and like, you're singing, and you just kind of sit off to the side, and you take a little video clip, and whatever. And then it was kind of like, hey man, don't post those.
So show them to your friends after the podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was like, this is a private, this is our little private club.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you who's a human jukebox is Blake Shelton. I mean, Blake, you can go, let's play a 1992 Crystal Ledoux, and he's like, okay, which one?
Wow.
I mean, and I'm just throwing out stuff like, he knows everything. We sat and sang 80s and 90s country one night down there for probably over 3 hours. just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know, and he would sing, I would sing a Keith Whitley song, and he would go, oh, that reminds me. And he would play like one of his favorite Keith Whitley songs. And that spurred into, well, one of my favorite Keith Whitley songs was actually a huge George Strait hit. I burn with desire each time my heart fans the fire to that old flame that burns inside of me. You know, and it's like you're doing that kind of stuff. And he goes, well, my favorite Keith Whitley song was actually a Randy Travis song. And, you know, and he, you know, I mean, and we sat and did that for hours. I mean, that's the cool stuff that you don't have a camera on. And if you did have a camera on it, it would probably ruin it.
Yeah.
You know, you just enjoy it. You enjoy those times. And I think that's the cool thing about those type trips, that just make them special.
Yeah.
You know, there's no pressure. You know, you don't have to sing the whole thing. You just start something, and what's great is you have that many musicians in a room, and it turns into a 4-part harmony, whether it was a 4-part harmony or not. Everybody just starts singing, you know, singing something, you know, pick a part above or pick a part below, and you start making kind of your own versions of stuff, and that's pretty slick.
So cool.
I wish I was there right now. Have my dobro out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've never, in all the times I've been there, we've never had a dobro. So, you know, that'd be.
And then you call me in, like you guys come back from the hunt or whatever, and I'm just sitting there ready to jam. You know what I mean? I got my cooler of beer.
He's got the dobro and the fiddle and 2 acoustics, 1 tuned down a half step. So, you know,
go.
And we've got 1 in open G, just so we can get different voicings out. That's what I like to do, man. When we go, you know, and somebody will grab a guitar and they're playing in G, and so I'm like, okay, let's throw the capo up on the 3rd fret, and I'll play an E. Just add that different voicing to it, like you're in the studio, you know. And I did something a couple years ago. I have trademarked the 2 capo theory.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so
I have noticed that you're listed as a producer on a lot of your songs too. So maybe this is part of your production method.
I like to, if I'm playing something that I can do the drop E, like a drop D. So if I'm playing something in E or F, I'll put 1 capo on the 1st fret, the drop D capo on the 3rd fret.
Gotcha.
And so you've got that low end in that, you know, in that acoustic. You know, so like if somebody's playing in F and they're playing capo on the 1st fret in E, you know, I'll capo up and play with that open E, the drop D.
But the low string is all the way down to F.
Yeah.
So,
you know, like I love doing that kind of stuff because
right,
it just adds different voicing, you know?
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they call it like drop capo or something.
Yeah. So you
like,
can, so like actually the capo that I have, I actually made it. You know, Kaiser made one that had the little handle on it that you could, like if you go to the E flat or the E minor, you know, you can hit that little plunger, and it basically fingers the E string to wherever, so it needs to be whatever the minor is there. Right. Well, they don't make that capo anymore. I begged them to make that capo again, and they're like, man, it's not cost efficient. It costs so much money to make that cast and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, you have that cast. You just redo
make 12
it.
and mail them to you.
Exactly. You know. So what I did was I took like just a regular, D'Addario capo and cut it.
MacGyver.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whittled that part out so I can just do that. So I those are my favorites.
Yeah, I for one weekend I went on the road with Rodney Atkins and was a guitar teching.
Yeah.
And he uses a lot of weird stuff and weird tunings and different things. It's like half step down, dad with all this different stuff. And I didn't really talk to him a lot. Hey, how are you kind of stuff. And I remember I brought him his guitar out on stage and he strummed one chord and he looked over at me and went, and I'm like, okay, we're good. I just knew, like, we're good. Okay, I did it. Because they couldn't find someone that knew how to operate, like, the tunings or whatever. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Well, see, and I have always tuned everything standard. The only thing I ever tuned down was, so I had a 12-string, and years ago we would do, for for the encore, I would do Bon Jovi's "Wanted Dead or Alive," and we did that a half step down. So instead of figuring out something else with a capo, I just had the whole guitar tuned down a half step. So I played it like in D, but it was down a half step. Yeah. And, and everything else has always been standard for me. I just, now there are guys out there that like to tune down a half step. So when they're singing it in the morning, or whatever.
I was playing a Riders Round last night, and one guy was the half step down, and one guy was a whole step down, and one guy was standard. Yeah, and I was just having to
You're having to do math.
Yeah,
you're having to do math in your brain because he's playing in G, but it's actually F.
Yeah, and I was just
that stuff's hard because you're on the fly, and and so much of what we do, you have to remember. Okay, he's a half step down, so if he's playing in D, I've got to capo up one and play in C. Or capo, and play, wherever.
Yeah.
That stuff's
Throws your muscle memory off.
Yes, absolutely. And somebody was doing it the other day, and they were off a half step. Oh, it was me and Rhett Akins and Wade Hayes. We were doing that '90s country thing down in Alabama, and we're all in the dressing room, and Paul Overstreet was in there, and Paul's guitar was a half step down, right, and so he hands the guitar to Wade, and Wade's a good guitar player. I mean, but he's having to on the fly play a half step up from where his brain is telling him it is on the neck. And he would start playing a solo on the acoustic, and he would go, I'm not good at math. I'm not. It was
Been there.
It was great. It was so much fun. So much fun.
That sounds like a cool gig.
Oh, it was, man. We had like 42 songs. It was over 3.5 hours of nothing but number one after number one after number one after number one. It was all filmed for TV, and it'll be on TV sometime this summer.
Hell yeah, that sounds great. Is it all kind of acoustic?
No,
full band,
man. One of the best smoking bands that Tommy Harden, who plays for Alabama, was on drums. Had multiple guitar players. So like every all the guitar tracks, you've got one guy playing in G, you've got one guy playing up, in capoed on the third fret, playing in E, electrics. They had every part covered. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was so good. And what was great about it was like, we go to do that, and you had the Kentucky Headhunters, and they played Dumas Walker, and it would go from it would just go from song to song to song to song to song, and it was all done for television. So you would have one act, and they would perform, and then there'd be like a 30-second changeover, right? And so they'd change it over, and then the voice of God would come on as Keith Bilbrey, and he would do the introduction, and they would walk out, and they would perform their song. And aside from a couple of technical issues, I think Lori Morgan had a technical issue with something with the ears not working, and she did her song twice, just because her ears weren't working, Okay, so they gave her another shot to do the song. Other than that, everybody was like a one take, just boom, boom, boom,
talent.
Boom. It was and that's what I'm saying. It was and it sounded so good, and you got 7,000 country music fans in this arena, and they're on their feet and they're singing every word. It was a great time.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm definitely gonna be on the lookout for that. That sounds amazing.
I think it's coming on PBS this summer. So perfect. Yeah, it's pretty slick.
Well, is there anything else that you want to sort of?
We've actually talked about nothing.
Yeah, we usually don't.
I mean, we came in here with the whole concept that we're going to talk about watches. Yeah. We're going to talk about likewise.
Okay,
likewise.
We covered it then.
You got the rose gold Oris.
Oh no, it's bronze actually.
Is it bronze?
Yeah.
It had that under the light.
That's right.
It looked
rose fancy.
Yeah.
It's getting a little patina to her.
Yeah.
So you got the calendar.
Yeah, it's got the pointer date on there.
Do you have a contact with these guys?
I do.
Because I think I want one of these.
Okay.
I've got probably 6 or 8 Orises.
Oh, really?
I do, and I've actually got one that I'm looking to replace. I have a crocodile band on it, and I've had it for so long that like where the stitching is, it's come out, and I had to reglue it, but I want to replace it because what I don't want is to be somewhere and the band come off
and lose the watch.
the watch.
Yeah.
So I want to replace that, but man, that's beautiful. Yeah, I've got the 1971.
Yeah, I saw you posting about
This is
these.
the lunar. This was from the Apollo mission, and it's the Bulova. So if you know anything about that story, in 1971, Bulova or Omega, yes, yep. Omega was the watch is the watch for space, and they took the Omega to on the on the Apollo mission, but it failed. Something happened in the gasket, and the watch actually failed. Well, if you know anything about how all that stuff works, like they'll go to Oris, and they'll go to Omega, and they'll go to Rolex, and they'll compete for a contract. And Bulova had made this watch, by the same specs. They took it on the Apollo mission, and that watch it performed. It worked.
That was the one that worked.
And so they made this one, and they made just a certain like a reproduction of it. And man, it's a great watch. What I love about this watch, if you look at it, you have to look at it under the light, right? But it's a titanium, but they call it like it's a Damascus process where they fold the face over and over and over. Titanium, but it's a folded, like how you make a Damascus knife.
Yeah.
And so all of the faces are unique.
A little different.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
and I
super
love
cool.
how they have the hands, they're all inset into the face versus being on top of it. Like a lot of the Speedmasters and all that kind of stuff, they float above the face, where that one is recessed down into the face.
That's cool.
So yeah,
we'll trade you the Oris for this contact.
Well, we can make that happen. We can make that happen. Yeah.
Hell yeah! I saw you. I love that one that you were wearing. I saw online. It's like gold with the green. It kind of reminds me of Augusta.
What it is. It's the.
I just always think of Augusta when I see that color scheme.
Well, doesn't Luke have a Rolex with that green face?
I'm sure he
well,
does.
Well, you know the story of the first one that he bought.
Yes. Oh, it's a great story.
That's one of the greatest stories ever. He told me that story before it ever came out online. He told me about being in New York and going in and buying his first watch. But that one, that's from the Super Seville line that Bulova has, and it's a quartz watch, but the way that they tuned and I'm not good on the terminology, but like it vibrates at a much higher rate. So instead of that quartz watch having that, the tick 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 tick, it's a sweeping motion. Yeah. And literally, and this is no lie, out of all the ultra expensive watches that I have, okay, when I bought that watch, from them, I set it like, let's just throw out dates. I set it like August, right, when I got the watch, and somebody was asking me something about it in like October or November, and I took my phone and I literally just opened the clock app on my phone, and I took the watch off and I set it down and I said, watch the second hand. And the second, because it's got that sweep and it's going all the way around, and we're watching it, and it got to like 3 seconds from the atomic clock, and it was perfect. Like months later. And the cool thing for stuff like that, to me, it's all about the details. I love great watches. What I don't like is having a really expensive watch and 2 weeks later it being 3 minutes off. Yeah. Because of the specs, they're plus or minus, a few seconds a day and stuff like that. And so like, when I got that watch, I was like, man, this thing is perfect. And literally, and I should have brought them with me, because I carry like 4 or 5 watches on the road with me at all time, but I should have brought it because it'll blow your mind. And the cool thing about like that Super Seville line that Bulova has, it's not ridiculously expensive. Like you can you can buy that watch that I had with the green face. I think it's like $600.
Yeah,
That's
You
great.
know, and and then they have one that has like the a turquoise face in it. It's a stainless watch with a turquoise face. It's part of that Super Seville line, and then they also have one that's a rose gold, or a rose colored that has it's a New York kind of theme to it. It's got a black face, but it's got this little white, and they're all individual. They all look different, but man, they're cool, and they've been great to me. I mean, I've had my dad had a Bulova watch in Vietnam, and my mom bought it and sent it to him when he was in Vietnam, and I believe it was from Andy's Jewelers in Blue Ridge, and he had always talked about that watch that he had for so many years. And and when Bulova reached out to me, I have a friend of mine that works there, and they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey man, would you be interested in doing some stuff for us?" And I was like, "Well," I said, it's funny, we're 30 years into this, and I probably have 25 of your watches, so might as well go ahead and solidify our relationship.
Yeah.
So I've been doing stuff with them, and it's really been nice because they'll send you cool things like this one right here is a limited run. This was probably the most expensive one that I have, and I think even like retail on this is like $1,500-$1,600.
Yeah,
It's not ridiculous. Right. And for people that look for quality, versus go out and spend $20,000 on a watch or up.
Yeah.
I'll go any day for something that I can set it now, and a month from now it hasn't lost a second. Versus the other stuff.
I have a date just that doesn't have like the fast date change.
Yeah.
So if it's like the second and the watch is set to the third, it's like I get a thumb cramp setting it. You know what I mean? I have to go all the way back around. I'm like, I'll just wear this watch next month.
Well, I'm gonna let it set for one day and not move, and then I'll But then that's when you screw yourself, because you don't know if it's AM or PM, and you're going to set it, and you're like,
yes.
No.
This is a pain only watch enjoyers will know. And then you've got people that have like these crazy perpetual calendars, things like that. Then it's like, then you got to.
I have one of those.
Yeah.
I have one of those that has the moon phase and the date and the and all that kind of stuff. And you can spend an hour setting that watch, and then you realize you've set it wrong, or whatever, and you're like, well, moon phase says it's so and so, and you're like, that's for today, but it's going the opposite direction. You need to, and you're like, ugh.
This is like the epitome of a first world problem.
Yeah.
Yes,
totally.
yes, absolutely.
All right, brother. Well, we appreciate you coming and hanging out.
Dude, man,
thank you
been
so
fun.
much.
I
This has been great.
hope it's been a good episode. I don't know
one of the
what
best. One of the best.
I don't know what
Absolutely.
I don't know what we've covered and what we haven't, but I don't know if we even got to what we were wanting to cover. But
No, we did. It's basically just stories.
I got you.
So,
I got you.
tell Kayla I said hey when you go over there
I'll do
to
it.
Sirius.
I'll do it.
And you're always welcome back, man.
Dude, let's do it
Let us
again.
know when you're
Okay.
back.
Good to see you,
Appreciate
brother.
it, man.
Yeah, man. Good to see
Thank you guys for checking out Raised Rowdy Podcast. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Cheers.